attitudes and where they're formed. We know that attitudes are formed from a lot of different contexts, whether it's family, culture, experiences, or through what's known as the tri-component model, which talks about the psychology of attitudes and how it's formed, where there's a strong link between what we think, what we feel, and what we do. So when we start to look at the oppressed groups in society, whether it's our LGBT group, whether it's our people with disabilities, our homeless people, whether it's refugees or asylum seekers, or our elderly, and the way our aged care system does not value them, it all comes back to where our attitudes are formed and what our experiences have been. Because ultimately there's a direct link between what we think, what we've experienced, what we feel, and then what we do. So when we start to look at this collective of how we interrelate as a human species, it does come down to how our attitudes are formed and then how we treat people. So ultimately, everything we do and everyone we interact with, there is a deeper root at play. So although we can talk about a collective, and we are a collective as a universe, ultimately we're not. We're still looking at it as, we do have autonomy obviously over our actions, but we still look at things from a very self-centered perspective. We are still a very selfish society where we want to understand other people's plights. We want to understand, and we talk a lot about empathy, but really what we're doing is we sympathise with people. So we see the elderly person who may be struggling, or we see the person who has a disability who can't do something, and we use what's known as inspirational porn. We look at it all and we feel sorry for them. We have sympathetic, but we're not empathetic. We can't put ourselves in people's situations because we don't want to. Why? Because we're selfish. So until we move ourselves from that notion of being selfish and so into
I've got a question. How would we put ourselves in? For example, I see someone in a wheelchair.
By being conscious and understanding of someone's plight, and by looking at someone in a wheelchair and thinking, okay, that person's in a wheelchair, yes, they have a physical disability, but cognitively they could be no different to you and I. So ultimately what I need to do is say, if that was me, how would I feel? How would I want to be treated? What sort of feelings or actions would I want to be given to me? And then ultimately, I will treat that person based on how I would feel. So once you can look at your own needs and then look at someone else's needs, and then every decision you make should be based on a collective need of what's good for both people, not just for ourselves. But because we're such a selfish society, we tend to go to ourselves. What's your question?
What you're trying to describe is what I have been writing about for a long time, collective consciousness.
Absolutely.
And the easiest thing to be able to get on with people is the easiest thing we have, the tool we have, is to change our attitude.
Absolutely. And attitude formation is important. Until we change our attitudes, or at least be aware of our attitudes, the way we treat people in society will not change. Whether it is our LGBT group, or whether it's our elderly or just people with disabilities, whatever it is, that will not change until we're aware of our attitudes and where they're formed, how they're formed, and ultimately what they lead to.
How do we become aware of our attitudes?
It's actually just stopping and reflecting and asking our questions and being aware of that culture, family, experiences will influence how we treat people. Whatever that marginalised group is, it doesn't matter. But the way we treat them, we just have to be reflective and identify with where our attitudes have been formed. And if we take a moment to be aware of that, then we start to look at people, because ultimately we are all human beings, we're all one species, we are a collective group. But unfortunately what happens is it's very easy to look at the stereotypes. We look at the media and we look at how they over-sensationalise these areas because they want us to talk about it. They want us to talk about our Aboriginal people and how, all the stereotypes that are being created about them. They want us to talk about people with mental illness and look at how people with mental illness are somehow, some people to fear. Even though 1 in 4 of us have mental illness in some stage of our life. 25% of our children in school have mental illness.
Oh, hang on, at some stage of their life.
Sorry, at some stage in our life, 1 in 4 people do. But I'm telling you now, in Australia, in the last research that was done in Victorian schools shows that 1 in 4 children have mental illness. What are we doing about that? We don't care about that. We're too busy looking at the big picture, and we look at mental illness as something to fear. So yeah, until we go back and we start to reflect on that, we're not going to change our view towards either whether it's people with disability, mental illness, our elderly, people with disability, or our same-sex or our different gender you know, or issues around gender equality. This just doesn't happen because we're so unaware. We're not conscious of our own attitudes. We're not aware of the attitudes that are being brought onto us from the media, from each other, from our family, culture, religion. Yes, sir.
I've been in England for some time, and there is only one word. Great for your life is money. Once you got money in your pocket, you could support your life.
Sure, but sir, I want to challenge you for a moment and think about money as energy.
No. Money as food to live on.
It is food to live on, but even the food we buy, someone had to grow it. Someone had to do it.
Yeah, but that's money circulation.
Money.
Hey.
If money don't circulate, farmer can't grow food for tomorrow.
I respect your view and I agree with it. However, if we look at everything as being energy, the way we treat each other and the energy we put into it and the
money is main energy.
It is. Sorry.
You're making a fundamental error. You're trying to have a rational conversation with Mirko. It doesn't work.
Okay, well, thank you.
Move along.
But you know what? I can be inclusive of all people and we all have our own strengths and that's okay. And we all have our own belief system. And what I was saying before is fundamental. Like I'm currently doing my PhD on this issue of belief system. So ultimately, if you have a strong belief that the only way of using energy is through money, then if that's your belief system, then ultimately your actions will be linked to your belief system. So what I'm talking about today is how our attitudes have been formed and how they affect the way we treat people in society. So whether, you know, and that's the big thing. So we look at all our oppressed groups. And as I said, I don't care whether it's a homeless person or a person with disability or our LGBT group or whether it's our elderly. But I do have a passion for people with disabilities and I do understand that ultimately we have to be aware of this tri-component model between our belief system, to what we think, what we feel and what we do, because ultimately the way we treat people will come from what we believe. And so we need to stop and reflect and be conscious of where those attitudes are coming from. Be conscious of the role that the media plays. Be conscious of the role that family play, of our experiences play. And be aware that ultimately if we want a collective conscience, and we want to be aware of that, then it does start with the way what we're thinking, because that will control what we do. So it's a really strong thing and we can't change people. You can't change anyone. But when we start to reflect on our belief system, that's when we start to challenge how we really do treat people. And you know what, I don't think, as I said earlier, I do think that sometimes we have become a little bit selfish because we do look at what are we getting out of it. We don't think about it, well this person has a limitation. We look at the barriers of people as something that well thank goodness that's not me. Thank goodness, you know, if that person has one leg and they're walking down the street with a prosthetic leg, well, thank goodness that's not me. Because that's what, you know, we've been led to believe, well, we feel sorry for people. So let's be more empathetic and understand and know that we are all connected. Yes, sir. Sorry, at the back there.
Yeah. It's collective consciousness that you're talking about.
It is.
And we are all one.
We are all one, but that's what I'm saying before. If we are all one, that's one thing, but we can't be all one. But we can also respect the fact that we can be all one but have a different belief system.
That's
and be aware of our belief
exactly.
systems.
We are all one.
It doesn't.
But each one of us is unique.
We are.
Because of our experience and our environment.
Exactly, but what I'm saying is you don't have to support something. For example, if you don't support same-sex marriage, fine. But be aware of your attitude, be aware of your belief system and be aware that will lead to an action towards someone. You don't have to agree with everything, but be aware of that because your actions affect other people.
If I identify with a culture and I'm proud of that, isn't that a double-edged sword? Isn't the other side of that coin to exclude other people?
Absolutely, and the thing is you can identify with a culture, you can identify with whatever it is, but ultimately our cultures do have belief systems and underpinnings, same as religion does, and that's fine, that's something we celebrate. But you know what I say, people? I say let's just appreciate each other's differences and celebrate the similarities. And it's not about tolerance, because tolerance means you need to tolerate people. Let's call it acceptance. Let's accept people's differences. Let's not make people want to believe what we believe, but just accept that we are all different. We all have different belief systems and we all have different understandings. And just come together, just as human beings, and want to support each other and love and care for each other. It doesn't matter. I'm the first person. I have a
We're on
different
the same
culture.
page, yeah.
I intertwine with many people, and that's fine, fantastic, and that's fine. Yes, sir.
Two things. Firstly, when you say that we have to start asking about our belief systems, I agree entirely. But in your second part of your talk, you're saying, let's accept our differences and so on. You're basically telling us what attitudes to adopt.
No, I'm not, because I told you at the very beginning, is be aware of your attitude. Be aware your attitude
That's right,
derive
at the
from
beginning,
somewhere.
but your ending contradicted your beginning.
Okay.
By saying we should all, whatever you were saying, you're telling us what to think. I like the first bit,
Sure.
focus with that, and don't go on to the second
That's
bit.
fine, but when
No,
the
she's
question
not
was
telling you
about
what to
culture,
think,
She
she's
is.
telling you how to think. How to think, not
She's
what
saying,
to think.
she's saying, tell her, let's
she's
everyone
saying
accept our
that's
differences.
how- that's how you
She's
do it.
giving homilies.
That's how you
That's
do
not
it.
a homily. Definitely not a homily, but I appreciate your take.
How to think, not what to think.
Sorry?
Mind.
Speak
main-
up.
Mind.
What mind?
M-I-N-D. Mind
Mind, yeah.
is enculturation.
And culture, yeah, absolutely. We are all one. We're all, regardless of what we believe. Yes, sir.
About the acceptance.
Yes.
I'm willing to accept differences as long as they don't suppress my rights to my beliefs.
Absolutely, and that's why I said to you before, unless we're aware of where our attitudes come from and where our belief systems come from, right? Then we don't really know ourselves anyway. So the whole idea is to be really aware of your own attitudes, your own belief systems, in order for you, because it's not about challenging other people, but I do challenge people because I believe that people with disabilities, I believe that refugees, I believe that same-sex or gender equality exists. I have these strong belief systems, but I don't go put them on other people.
But do
I
you-
just say to people, be aware of your belief system, because your belief system will have a strong link, because we know the psychology. If you look at tri-component model, we know that our belief system, what we think, what we believe, and how we treat people are all linked, and we don't change how we treat people until we challenge what we believe, or at least be aware of it.
Correct.
And if you're in a service delivery, I'm an educator, but if you're in a service delivery, then you have to be aware of that, because otherwise you're gonna follow the stereotypes, and you're going to exclude people, and you're going to judge people, and you're going to treat people, especially our marginalised groups, really poorly. And you know what? There's no one who's out there who really advocates for some of those marginalised groups. Why? Because the stereotypes and the judgments are so ingrained in our belief system that it's very hard to shake them. Yeah.
Well, you're right, in the sense that people think in terms of their beliefs. They're not rational in that sense. They're highly emotional, highly
Absolutely.
irrational.
We're very emotive rather than objective. It's all
Yes.
about emotive
So,
change.
but surely the cure to these ills is to, as much as possible, on a individual level and as a society, try not to have beliefs, but analysis. This surely is the way forward.
Absolutely, there is no other way. As a human race, as a collective, and we were talking about collective consciousness. Absolutely, as a collective consciousness, we need to be aware that that if we don't start to question our belief systems and we don't start to question our attitudes, because we grow up, we get told, especially me and my Generation X, we're told you've either got a good attitude or a bad attitude. I'm challenging it. It's not about a good attitude or a bad attitude. Just be aware of your attitude. Be aware of where it stems from. Be aware of the role that the media plays, social media plays in creating and changing or challenging our attitudes. Be aware of the role that family play, and religion and politics. It all goes into strengthening these stereotypes, because it creates assumptions. And when we have assumptions, they create this belief system. We start to believe things, and once we believe something, we're going to think and feel. And you know what? We always do what we think and feel. So that thinking and that feeling will turn into an action, and that's how we treat people. So if we just become aware of it, it does make a difference.
It's about people being educated as well.
It is. It's just about being aware.
Education is the key.
You know what? It's just about awareness, being educated, being aware of what our attitude is, where our attitude comes from, and ultimately how we're treating people in society. regardless of which group it is, which marginalised group it is, it doesn't even have to be a marginalised group. The more positives we have in our life, the more we're viewed positively. If I'm a single mother who lives at Mount Druitt, who doesn't work, I'm viewed negatively. I could be a single mother who is a university lecturer who lives in my own home in Manly, and I'm automatically viewed differently, because the more negative stereotypes that surround a person, the more negatively our assumptions will be about that person, and ultimately the way we treat them. So we need to be aware of it. And as I said, it doesn't matter whether it's the elderly, whether it's our LGBT group, or whether it's our
wish I had
homeless or
her
people with
ability to
disabilities.
talk.
We will make assumptions about those people based on our experiences and how our attitudes are formed. All I'm saying, people, is stop and think and be aware of your attitude and how it's being formed towards each of these groups, and then challenge yourself and make your awareness, just be aware of it and be aware that that's how you're going to treat that person.
Would you please, thank you.
Marg 2511 on Twitter, if anyone needs. Yeah.
With that book, give a demonstration of collective consciousness. There you are.
Thank you. We are. Thank you for the
I want to
time.
respond to Maggie's comments.
Thank you. Please do.
I'm not actually going to disagree with any of it. I want to add to it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I
Thank you,
have trouble following any speaker that gets up here. So,
Intelligent discrimination is the essence of wisdom.
Indeed. Wow. Wonderful.
That's my quote.
Lovely.
I guess I'll use
They
it.
don't like Albert because
Be the change you want to be.
Do you? Oh, that's wonderful.
Double-edged sword by
Thank you.
creating
And thank you for your book.
other people.
I'd like
This
to
is
add,
your book. You wrote
add to
it.
that by
I
saying
wrote it.
there is no such
Contact
thing
me.
as a Scotsman.
I will.
There's no such
You are
thing
nice to me.
as an Anglo-Australian or an Aborigine or a Chinaman or a
Your
Frenchman.
name is
Simon.
We are just
Pleased to meet
organisms.
you.
If, for example, I was born and immediately I was transported to Japan and raised by Japanese parents in Japanese society, I would talk Japanese, I would think Japanese, I would be Japanese. To call me Australian just because I happen to have Australian parents would be foolish. In other words, someone becomes a Scotsman not because they're inherently a Scotsman, but because they've adopted the beliefs and traditions and customs under Scottish life.
Like Donald Trump has.
Well, I don't know about Donald Trump. What I'm saying is that this lady's right in the fact that we have this belief about ourselves, which is make-believe. The only reason I believe that I'm Anglo-Australian is because I choose to. I know I've adopted the beliefs and customs and language, but the fact is I'm not inherently Anglo-Australian. I was created that way by the culture in which I was raised. We have to accept the fact that most of what we believe is make-believe. It is what, as this lady says, belief systems. Belief systems are terribly strong. They're very advantageous for us. The last thing I want to do is wake up in the morning and try and create an identity of myself. I don't want to start from scratch. Of course I adopt the identity I had yesterday. But what I have to do is accept the fact that it's make-believe, and then as soon as I realise it's make-believe, I do what she does. You keep the good stuff, you discard the trash.
Good stuff.
How do you decide what's the good stuff?
Well, that's the second thing, is the belief systems we have. If someone believes that a race is inferior, how do they decide if that's a good belief or a bad belief? There are 5 questions. Some people have what's called a core belief, such a strong belief system that it doesn't matter what you say, they will not change their minds. And that's hard. You can ask them to reflect and they won't change it. What I suggest to people is, if you've got any attitudes that are in any way questionable, if you've ever been called racist or sexist or ageist or whatever, and you think, no, I'm not, what I say is true, here's a way to test whether or not you have a belief system that's getting in your way. There are 5 questions, are as follows. And we'll use a benign example. Let's say someone believes in astrology. They believe somehow that balls of helium and hydrogen light years away can somehow affect our personality. They can't, but it doesn't matter what you say to a true believer, that person will always believe in astrology. And here are the 5 questions you need to ask to examine your belief systems. First question is, what would change your mind? Now, if you ask a person with a very strong belief system, what would change your mind about your belief?
Persuasion.
They can't think of anything. They say, well, I can't think of anything that would change my mind. And that's one big clue. Thank you.
Always you will change your mind. You could believe whatever. If you don't have food to eat, you are nobody.
Thank you, Mirko. That's one question. What would change your mind? If you can't think of an answer to that, you've probably got a strong belief system.
An experience can change your mind.
Yes.
For example.
But they won't realise that.
No.
If an astrologer said, an experience would change my mind, then suddenly you think, well, they've still got an open mind. They still realise that it's possible that their mind can be changed. But they won't come up with that. Or if they do, you know it's not a strong belief system. Yeah, you're right. She's right again, and I'm not being patronising. Experiences can change people's mind. I've heard of people who are terribly racist. Suddenly they encounter someone of their race, and suddenly they have an experience with that person and suddenly see them as normal, heaven forbid. That can actually change people's experiences. So an atheist can have a religious experience and believe in God. Experiences are huge when it comes to. Read this woman's PhD when it comes out. Second question to ask yourself, if you think you might have a belief system, if someone challenges your belief, do you immediately try to prove that person wrong? In other words, you say to your astrologer, I think that's a lot of crap. If the astrologer immediately says, well, gets on the defensive, you know they've got a strong belief system. If they say, well, good luck to you, and walk away, they may not. Third question to ask is, never mind, 4, do you tend to go off on a tangent, avoid the question, answer a different question? If I say to an astrologer, how come a ball of helium and hydrogen, light years away, can affect my personality when I'm in a room when there's far more gravity from the earth and even from the doctor's stethoscope than if you ask a question like that, the person will change the instead of saying, well, gee, I don't know, I hadn't thought of it that way, they'll change the question and answer a different question. That's another way to tell if they've got a strong belief system. These things you need to know, because if you follow her advice, you might start to, when you reflect, you ask yourself these questions and say, well, yeah, maybe my belief system should be challenged. Fourth question, confirmation bias. Do you tend, when someone says something that reinforces your belief, do you tend to embrace it and keep it and lock it up for evidence for the future so you can put it out next time there's an argument? And do you tend to forget when something contradicts your belief system? That's confirmation bias. You cherry pick the ideas that suit you and you ignore or reject the beliefs that are uncomfortable. And lastly, do you know, do you just know that it's true? Look, I know that, even though what you say about the stars and the helium and hydrogen, everything you say, I just know that there's truth in astrology. That's the fifth and final question that tells you that you've got a strong belief system. And if you get good at questioning your belief systems, you start to get good at questioning those important belief systems. Are people really inferior? Should we really treat refugees this way? Should we do this? Should I treat my spouse that way? Should I assume that what's his name had something called the tyranny of the shoulds? I'll come to you in a minute. And then you. Tyrannies of the should. That's what he should do. That's what she should do. That's what I should do. They're belief systems. The tyranny of the should. And as soon as you start to look at those shoulds and start to recognise them and say, is it really true? Then you start to liberate yourself. 1, 2, you're first.
Now, all those reasons, you said something about the third, but you did not say what it was.
The third one was, do you tend to go off on a tangent?
Right.
That, do you change the question so it suits you better?
Wait,
Yes.
I just want to rebut where you said that the first half of
Did you want up here or just there?
Oh, I don't mind.
Come up here
I
then.
don't mind.
They're probably sick of me already.
I just want to rebut on that last point because what you're saying at the end there with that person who looks at the star signs and says, and you question, you want to change their belief system because you might not believe that. But ultimately what I'm saying, if that makes that person feel good in their life and they believe it and it makes them feel good, so be it. It doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter. Does that make sense? So if they believe in it, that's fine. That's from a, yeah, but you know what? There's always going to be, but that's if you're searching for truth. But if you can prove it, right? If we're talking from a scientific, testable, evidence, but life is not evidence-based. But it's not. I'll tell you why. You can have someone.
Sorry, just slow down a bit. Do you really mean life is not evidence-based?
No, what I mean, human behaviour.
Do you really mean people live their lives without looking for evidence? Or madam, some of us do.
Okay,
look
fantastic.
For the evidence.
And
if you don't, then you're fit.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm glad that that's your perception of me. Can I just say that you can have someone in a wheelchair who is non-verbal, cannot control their muscles, cannot control any of their speech or being able to eat any of their muscles, but their brain and their cognitive ability is no different to yours and mine. And just because they present differently, we talk down to them, we judge them, we treat them negatively. But also, a society as a whole, generally we do.
That's irrelevant. It's
to you.
not how individuals treat them that matters.
Okay, it does. However, ultimately what I'm saying is when we look at a testable scientific response to everything in our world, including human behaviour, it doesn't. There are some things that do not fit in the same. So we don't test them and we don't judge them because they don't fit in. Science teaches us one thing, psychology teaches us another. There is a crossover, but our attitudes towards individuals should not be based on just a testable result. And that's fine, and I respect that, and I suppose when you've done the work and the research I've done, then you would know where I'm coming from on that. And I'm more than happy to debate anyone on that point. Yes, sir.
I agree in the way a lot of people wouldn't be here if they didn't have faith or hope.
Absolutely. I can tell you really quickly. Now, people will hold on to things, and I know you can question on faith. I can tell you that when I delivered my twins who died and I had a stillbirth, if I didn't have something to hold on to, and my belief system could have changed from then, and it has in some regards, but there are things that get us through that are not testable. And that's okay. If it makes a person feel good and gives them the quality of life and it empowers them, who are we to judge them? Who are we to say, don't believe in this and believe in that? Ultimately, it has to come back to the person. Do you agree, madam? Absolutely, because, yes, sorry.
I agree with what you're saying. And like, also to add on to what you were saying about but you need facts. Like, that might be your personal thing that makes you feel good.
That's right. That's your belief system. Evidence. But there are some things we can't prove some things. There are lots of things in our world we can't prove. It doesn't mean we discount them as being real, because they could be a real experience to someone somewhere and it feels real to them, and we have to understand that and respect that. Yes, sir.
I was going to say to you that how someone feels about something is unimportant compared to the important issue of, is it actually correct? Is it real? Is their response accurate? And I would put it to you that pandering to the emotions of people, right, is making a current problem in our society worse. The Neolithic is alive and well and living in Blacktown. I know, I live there, right?
Absolutely.
So our society should be striving against human nature, surely, to understand the world around us, and our emotions about it shouldn't come into play.
That's right, it's utopia, dystopia. And the thing is, like this gentleman just saying it's stupid and making all those judgments, that's a judgment call. That's a judgment call, and for most people it'd be insulting if they had what you were talking about and they were reactive to that. I'm not reactive to that because I know I'm not stupid, and I know what I'm saying has some foundation. So I'm not responding to that. I don't find that. Sorry?
How you could prove that you're not stupid?
I don't have to prove it. Who do I have to prove it to?
Well, what are you talking about?
I'm just responding. But I respect your point. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're correct in saying that they're not useful because but there's beliefs.
Believe it or no? Believe it or no? Who said that? Who said believe it or no?
Mirko, shut up.
police main,
Can we be respectful of someone asking a question, please? Because you know what? Everyone has the right to ask a question. Thank you.
those policemen, whatever, the thing, right, yeah, they accomplish their purpose.
Absolutely.
In this way, that they made you actually, they made something decisive by themselves. Not that they're necessarily real, but that they made you.
Yeah, and it all links into our own identity ultimately, and there is purpose to everything, isn't there? I think.
I think.
Madam Speaker, you're doing a great job. I want to say that learning to walk is a skill we have to learn. In the same way, critical thinking is an important skill, because we might have to, for example, hire financial advisors, tradesmen and the like. So to believe something just because it suits us would, in effect, inhibit that learning the skill of critical thinking.
We can all become inhibited just by our mindset. So you can have two types of mindsets. We know you have a growth or a fixed mindset. Carol Dweck does some awesome research in the States on the effect of a growth and a fixed mindset on students in their learning as adults. We have a fixed mindset. We're always on results based. We're always looking at that end product. And we know that when we focus on the end product, it always leads to depression. It can lead to anxiety, it can lead to negative feelings. But if we have a growth mindset, sir, where we look at the process of learning, the process of developing something, and we put the emphasis on the process, then we build the skills to cope, we build resilience. And one strong point will come from that. You think about a classroom and a teacher looks at a mathematical question and she marks it right or wrong. That student sitting there worried, is my answer right or wrong? Rather than that teacher saying, I like how you persevered with that problem. I like how you're using problem-solving strategies. That student's developing the skills to know it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. It's okay to fail.
Do you think teachers don't do that?
Yes, I do, sir.
Oh, that's bullshit.
Well, I'm the lecturer in the Masters of Teaching, and I actually supervise our prac students in school. So ultimately our students.
Teachers, do you?
I
supervise maths teachers, do you?
So
do you?
Sorry? Yes, I do. And unfortunately, our maths teachers.
Don't believe you. Don't believe you. Give us some details.
Sure.
Schools, students.
It's unethical for me to do that, but I can challenge this.
Don't try and be aggressive and intimidate her. Use your knowledge and academics to talk to her.
Unfortunately, while teachers use textbooks to teach children with a right or wrong answer, there's always going to be a fixed mindset at play. But teachers who turn around and say to their children, the answer is 100, what is the question? Children who just know a little bit can give a little bit. Children who know a lot can give a lot. And the process of learning becomes important. There's no right or wrong answer. Yes, sir.
Frequently, there is only a right or a wrong answer.
Correct, but what we need to build is resilience in children to know that they can keep trying and they can work towards it. Because you know what, we need to teach that failure is part of the process. Failure is part of the process, and the effort we put into our life, when we're talking about well-being, we're talking about everybody's well-being, regardless of their ability, their disability, their strengths, their weaknesses. It's about everybody succeeding. It's about everybody feeling good and having good, strong well-being. So it shouldn't matter. It actually shouldn't matter. Yes, there are times and those people who need that right answer will go down that path eventually. But we're not in the business of breaking children.
Please thank Maggie, everyone.